The Truth and Democracy Coalition was formed to build a pro-democracy movement in America. We educate the public about disinformation, teach people to be critical of the propaganda they consume, and provide critical analysis of current events and social issues. We produce media and educational materials, hold seminars and meetings like this one, work with other organizations, and organize events and activities geared toward building a pro-democracy movement in America. The coalition seeks to build communities of people of different faiths and ideologies to defend and promote democracy locally, nationally, and globally. On the Truth and Democracy podcast, we're on Facebook and YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/@Truth and Democracy Coalition. What I want to do first is make some announcements and introduce Stephanie, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. First, I want to tell you about our upcoming events. A very important one is on Friday, January 6th at 7 p.m. at Whittier City Hall. We're going to be celebrating democracy with speakers, music, food, and fun. So join us as we rally for democracy and against election denialism. And then on January 8th at 2 p.m., we're having another Zoom meeting, our regular second Sunday of the month meeting. We will have braver angels with us to train us how to move past political rancor. They will show us their techniques for reaching across the political divide. So to register for that, go to tinyurl.com/braverangel. Finally, I want to thank you for your support as we advance forward with our efforts to defend democracy. You can find us at truthanddemocracycoalition.com. Now to our program for today. Democracy is under attack in the United States and around the world. In America, the struggle for democracy has moved to the states. Laws making it more difficult to vote and allowing partisan officials to overturn election results have been proposed in state houses across the nation. These types of voter suppression bills are not limited to state governments. Local governments also seek to suppress the vote in order to hold on to power. Stephanie Vallejo is the leader of the Friendly Hills Neighborhood Organization, a group advocating for term limits for Whittier City Council. She accuses council members of unethical behavior and says that the city government lacks transparency. Some of the city leaders, she alleges, are not following Fair Political Practice Commission regulations regarding political records and allowing unfettered lobbying by the construction industry, leading to gentrification. In recent years, the city council moved city elections to a more expensive off-cycle election day, meaning the election is not on the regular election day. Instead, it's on another day, forcing people to come out to vote just to vote for city council. With fewer people going to the polls, this helps them control the outcome of the election. It reduces turnout, and that's their way of controlling the outcome of the election and suppressing our vote. And many of the same council's members have been on the council for over 18 years, and community activists complain that the council is unresponsive to the demands of the community. So join us as we lift up this local activist and organize locally to promote, defend, and protect democracy. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So I want to talk a little bit about our city elections. In the city of Whittier, we run our own city elections. They're on even years, and they're conducted in April. Out of about I put it, okay, so I did meet with our city clerk and got some information about our city elections. And I actually found out that our city elections only cost the city of Whittier $50,000 to run, as opposed to paying $150,000 to have the county run it. But here is the problem with that. In our last election, last year in April, or this year in April, the city does send out absentee ballots to everybody in the city that's a registered voter. But the problem was that is we only get 2 voting centers, as opposed to our last general election, a month ago or less than that. The county ran it, and we had, in my own area, I had 3 voting centers. So the city of Whittier is opting to save money. And I know, and I have to make the correction that in our description, we said that the cities is more expensive. It's actually less expensive to run our own elections because they're giving us less voting centers. That means that if you lose your ballot, you don't get a ballot, or whatever happens that you want to go vote in person, you only have 2 places to go do it. And our little city is 14 square miles big. We should have more than 2 voting centers. So it was interesting to me that our city clerk was really proud of the fact that he only spends $50,000 on our election. And I told him that that was unacceptable. We have a lot of other people, and those voting centers weren't even centralized. They weren't accessible to people who possibly don't have a way to get to the voting center, right? Or maybe have a disability and they can't walk that far. They don't have a car to drive there. So I told him we needed more voting centers. And he did say that next election, they were going to add 2 more voting centers. So, and, I just don't think that's acceptable. I feel that we need to put a lot more voting centers in our city to give more access to all of our community members to have the opportunity to vote. I think in doing otherwise, people are not going to vote. We're already in the off-cycle election, and that means that less people are going to vote than usual. This last general election, we did have a municipal, I don't want to say municipal, a school board member that positions, quite a few, that pertain to our city, and one of those was the high school board. So it was interesting to see how many more people voted in the general election as opposed to our city April election a few months earlier. So clearly what they're doing is not working, in my opinion. It's a way to repress or oppress the voters because you're not giving us a lot of options where we can go vote in person. And again, if you don't get a mail voting ballot or absentee ballot for whatever reason, then you don't vote, right? So unfortunately, these only 2 voting centers is just not going to cut it for the city of Whittier. So another thing that concerned me, and actually one of my friends told me about this, do we provide education to our Spanish speaker or people who, maybe have never voted before or haven't filled out an absentee voting ballot, how to fill it out? We don't do any of that. We don't do any of that type of thing. And that's necessary, I think, in our community, particularly. Also, because we do run our own elections, the city counts our votes. And to be honest with you, at this point, I don't feel that the city is trustworthy for us to trust that they're, just an opinion of mine, that, they're going to do the right thing. I hope they do the right thing. But at this point in time, I just don't feel that we should be running our own elections. The city is not transparent with us. The city doesn't want to hold themselves accountable for any of the things they've done. And we have council members not following finance campaign form laws. Who knows what else is going on? We haven't investigated that. So, I'm very concerned about that. Very concerned about the way they hold our city elections. So I'm a proponent that we revert back to the general election and the primary election dates so that we all vote at the same time with those dates, so that more voter turnout is happening. And I'm also a big proponent that the LA County voters, registrar voters, should be handling our elections, not the city of Whittier. So yeah, that was another thing that really was concerning to me. So because of all the reasons I talked about, my group and I started talking about how can we fix this in the interim. And we decided that the best way to fix this is to have Whittier term limits. So we decided to do it. Why? Because studies have found that term limits, these term limit laws have increased diversity, right? Equality. We have fewer career politicians. Like you said, Richard, some of our council members have been in power for over 20 years. 20 years is a long time. Yeah, that's really concerning. So those are career politicians. Having a career politician can create the propensity of special interests, right? Having their own agenda. We need more opportunities for leadership, and that's part of the reason why we believe we need Whittier term limits. We also believe that it's going to promote a democratic system for elections, and it's going to encourage people to seek office, get involved in their own community, have a voice, right? New faces, new ideas, new enthusiasm. And it's another opportunity to promote transparency, which in my opinion, we lack. And I can talk about so many other things that I've been dealing with the city involving other issues. But for all these reasons, we are proponents of term limits. As you can see here, we just saw a whole bunch of LA scandals. Again, these are just examples of why we need term limits. I want to quote Andrew Lara, who is a City of Pico Rivera council member. The City of Pico Rivera just put term limits on this last general election ballot, and it passed by a big majority. He said, we need to, and I quote him, we need to rotate council members, give the opportunity to the public to participate, right? When you are on for more than 12 years, you have an unhealthy accumulation of power and influence. And that's the problem we have in Whittier. So I want to talk about cities with term limits, because our group, our organization also looked who has term limits, who does not. The city of Montebello currently has term limits with the 4-year cool-off period. City of Downey has 2 term limits in their lifetime. That means you can only serve for 8 years and you're out. This last election, look at it's pretty amazing. The city of Baldwin Park passed a term limits measure. 80% of the voters approved it. Bell Gardens, my old city, 75%. Pomona, 75%. Beverly Hills, 81%. Linwood, 60%. Clearly, the voters believe that we need term limits. And I believe that in the city of Whittier, we also need term limits. What cities do not have term limits? City of Whittier, City of Santa Fe Springs, City of La Mirada, and City of La Habra. Those are the cities closest to us. So what we propose. So we are proposing a 3-year, 4-year lifetime term. So that means 3 terms of 4 years, giving you a total of 12 years to be on our city council with no re-election. It's a lifetime term, meaning that you could only run those 3 terms and you're out after that. We believe that this is going to give the best opportunity for less corruption, more transparency, more opportunity for people to participate in our systems, our local control systems. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. One of the concerns that our group has, which is it may happen, it may not happen, we're going to receive a lot of opposition. We're expecting it from certain groups in our city. Opposition, because frankly, I believe that our local officials, our council members, our mayor, they don't want to lose the control they have, the influence they have over the city. And I think we're going to have some opposition, and we welcome it. We believe that this is the best for our city. We've had large citywide polls where we've passed out the poll links to groups throughout our entire city, and people overwhelmingly said they want term limits. So for those reasons, Friendly Hills neighborhood is supporting term limits for the city of Whittier. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer for us, we do need volunteers to gather signatures. We are going to need some donations because we do have to go talk to a lawyer and have him draft our measure. So if we really need your help, if you're willing to help us in any way possible, please go to our website. It's friendlyhillsneighborhood.org. And you'll see the term limits page there, and you can sign up to volunteer. So that pretty much wraps up the term limits issue here. But I would really like to hear what you guys think, what questions you may have. What do you think, Rich?
Well, I think we are ready for some questions. Thank you very much for that thorough and eye-opening presentation. So let's go straight to the question. We got some hands up. Denise wanted to know, where do you report these type of crimes? I know you said the Fair Political Practices Commission. Is that where you report them to?
Well, I'm not I'm going to say I'm not an expert in this area, but I can share. I did a whole, I put together, because I'm also part of another organization called Our Neighborhood Voices, who's advocating for a constitutional amendment to our California Constitution to prevent developers from just taking over the city and what they want to build and all that, and local control. So because of that group, and so many people were interested in looking into their own council members, I put together an investigative, how to investigate your city council, like a manual. And I'm willing to share that with anybody. If you let me know, I can email it to you or share it through my website as well. But the first thing I would suggest, that if you're interested in knowing where to report it, is you have to look at the finances first. For example, in our city, who's ultimately responsible for the campaign finance forms being filled out correctly is the candidate and his committee or her committee. And the city clerk is supposed to be checking those things. And if they see discrepancies or problems, they're supposed to bring that to the attention of the candidate or the committee. In our case, that didn't happen. And the other thing I would suggest is, number one, look at the campaign forms. Number two, look at your municipal code online to see if you have a campaign finance ordinance. Because a lot of times if you do, like our city does, that could mean that it's a misdemeanor, which is a crime. So you could report that to the police department, which I'm about to do. And you can also report the violations of the government code, campaign finance violations, to the Fair Political Practices Commission. They will take your complaint. They can take it anonymously, or you can do a sworn affidavit and submit the information you have, evidence, because they require evidence. That means that you have to send them copies of the finance campaign forms and whatever other evidence you may have, and send that to them along with a sworn statement stating what you believe they violated. Now, in my case, I filed my complaint months ago against our council member, and they gave him almost 3 months to revise the forms. Did he do it? I don't know if he did it or not, but they finally notified me that, yes, we're going to move ahead with the complaint and we're going to investigate it. So that doesn't mean they're going to, I'm not saying that he's in violation of them. It's still an allegation to this point. But yes, look at your municipal code and you report into the FPPC code. And if your municipal code says it's a violation of a crime, then you can report it to your police department.
Great. So I'm going to get to the chat, but I want to take some of the hands that are raised. So Judith and Rory, if you want to put your hand up and ask your questions, live, that would be great. But I'll try and squeeze them in as we go to Anthony Avila. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
My name is Anthony Avila. I live in Whittier, and I just want to thank you, Stephanie, for your effort to get this done. I had thought about this situation myself for a long time, and I think your organization, however, I think is being a little bit too generous with proposing a 3-term limit. I think a 2-term limit would be better, but I'll take it for what it is, and I would like to go ahead and start knocking on doors for you so that we can get this ball rolling. I'm upset that the city council actually appointed Fernando Dutra to a 2nd term. Now that is as undemocratic as it gets, because I was not allowed to vote either for him or against him. I wasn't even allowed to write in a candidate, which I wanted to do. Now he was allowed to run for a 2nd term because unopposed, because the person who decided to run against him dropped out of the race. Yeah. And so we have to do away with that. It's just not right. And there are other things I have to say about this situation, but I'll turn it over to the next person who has a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay. All right. Let's go to Brittany Brim. Can you unmute, Brittany?
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Stephanie, for this good presentation. I'm from Bakersfield, California, and I was just wondering, how can you build the voting center? Because we don't have a voting center in Bakersfield, by the way.
Okay. Do you want to answer that, Richard, or you want me?
Go ahead, Stephanie. I don't think I know the answer to that question.
I'm going to take a stab at it because I don't really know that much about it, but voting centers are actually put into place by either the city if they're running their own election, or the county. So if you have a city that runs its own elections, then they'll set up voting centers either like a few days, or I can't remember how many days it is, prior to the date that you can start voting. So they're the ones that do it. It's not something that's open 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's only during the election period. So that's when you'll see those kind of voting centers open up. It's to allow people to come in and vote in person. Some counties and some cities will allow early voting, which allows you to go in a few days before. And then some cities will just open voting centers the day of the election. So it just depends on the county and cities and who offers early voting and who doesn't.
Okay. And the other question, I don't live in Whittier, so I was just wondering if I could bring something to the Bakersfield City's council.
Well, one thing I think is that, Brittany, you're in Bakersfield, and we need people to organize locally in their local communities. So it would be a good thing for you to look into that, and we'll be here to help you and support you and help you try and organize out there in Bakersfield. And that's what I want to make that offer to everybody here. If they have activities and want to do some action in their local community, right now we're doing a January 6th event in Whittier, and we would also like that to be held in other communities as well, for you to hold your events celebrating democracy or defending voting rights on January 6th. That's a very important date for us to remember that we almost lost our democracy, and spend some time appreciating the democracy and the Constitution and what our founders created. So yeah, keep in contact and start looking in that and start organizing locally. Let's go with Susan Cameron, Reverend Susan Cameron, I believe. But she's been a member. She's participated on our podcast, Bible Study for Progressives. So make sure you check out some of our Bible and religious programming that I did before I started doing the Truth and Democracy Coalition. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. There you go.
Okay, now, yeah, I got a message that said the host is not allowing people to unmute themselves. So just so you're aware of that.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I'll keep my eye on that. That's a good reason. That's why we don't have anybody bombing us yet.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Well, my question, I've been also speaking with other people who are interested in more local democracy here in Whittier. And we've come up with 3 other issues. And I'm wondering if your lawyer is interested in looking to see if they could all be combined into one petition, or if they have to, by law, be separate. First of all, we need to move our election date to November. And that requires a charter amendment.
Mhm.
And the city council is not going to put that on the ballot unless we start a petition campaign. Second thing is ranked choice voting, because we elect by a plurality. There's no runoff, and that's not good either. And then the third additional item that maybe has a little more pros and cons is to have 5 districts instead of having the mayor elected every 2 years. I think that makes money too important in politics. So I would really like to suggest that those 3 things be added to the petition, if it's possible to do it all at once, or to run a combined campaign for all 4 of these issues. What do you think?
Susan, those are great ideas. I'm really excited you said that, because we have talked about so many of the things that we want to change in our charter. And the main one is term limits. But what you just said about the changing the date, that's so important. So it just, for us right now, we would love to work with you and maybe form, work as a team and collaborate and get that going. I would love that. I think those are great. I didn't think about the ranked choice voting. I think that's awesome. That's a great idea. Yes.
So I think that if we can combine those all into one petition, it would save so many costs, and they're all related in modernizing our election procedures. So it might be possible to combine them all, or to have separate petitions and run a joint campaign so that volunteers can collect signatures on both at the same time. Both or all.
I totally agree with you. I think we should, actually work together. I'd be more than happy to do that. I'm so excited that you said that and you brought that up. Yes, Susan, I would love to work with you. Definitely. Great idea.
Okay, great. Do you know
Also, Susan,
Yes.
I'd like to connect with you too. I know you're doing this work here in Whittier, so I'm here in Whittier, so I'd like to connect with you and your group and be involved. If you want to send me something on Facebook or an email, if you guys have meetings or anything like that, let me know, because
So far, it's just been informal discussions. The group that I'm mostly involved in it, which is why I was late today, is Homes for Whittier. So we're really interested in having more affordable housing in Whittier too. But we've got to have democracy.
But let's keep in contact. And if you want to do those types of things, connect us together so that we can organize and do them together.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Susan.
All right, thanks.